Can you imagine the person you've loved since you were a teenager, the one who promised you forever, suddenly looking at you like you're a monster? What if that person, your husband, then turned around and tried to frame you for murder? Just 6 months ago, my world shattered. My sister-in-law, Laura, Luke's sweet younger sister, died in a freak accident. She fell down the stairs at their family home, hitting her head. It was horrific. And the hardest part? I was the last person to see her alive. I'd popped in for less than 10 minutes, just a quick hello. She was in her pajamas, making coffee. I didn't even stay for a drink. The memory haunts me. How could such a brief, meaningless interaction be her very last? She deserved so much more. Luke and I have been married for a year, together for 4, but we've known each other for over 2 decades. We were all close, like family. When her parents found her, they called Luke, and we rushed over, facing that unimaginable pain together. Or so I thought. In the days that followed, something shifted. Luke started grilling me. Relentlessly, what did we talk about? What was she wearing? Where were we standing? He'd twist my words, accuse me of contradicting myself over tiny details, claiming I was withholding information because I couldn't remember the exact pattern of her pajamas. It escalated quickly. Really quickly. Within a week, I lost my cool. I snapped, telling him I was done answering his ridiculous questions. He dropped it, and I convinced myself it was just grief, a terrible, ugly side effect of immense sorrow. His behavior, otherwise, seemed that of a man in deep pain. Then, last Friday, in front of his own parents, he outright accused me. He said I killed her. The words felt like a physical blow. We were all stunned into silence. There had been an inquest, you see, which concluded it was an accidental passing, no doubt whatsoever. But Luke? He stood there, practically spitting, saying it was completely obvious, and he couldn't believe no one else could see it. He fabricated this insane story, that I went through his phone, found messages between him and Laura, and confronted her. That things got out of hand, and I pushed her down the stairs. I was reeling. Messages? I've never ever looked at his phone. By the end, he was screaming about going to the police, overturning the inquest, and how I wasn't going to get away with it. Laura and I had a great relationship, all of us did. I had no idea where this delusion was coming from. Even if I had seen some messages, what could possibly drive someone to murder? It's just ridiculous. He left with his parents that day and hasn't spoken to me since. His mom has given me some vague, evasive answers, admitting she doesn't know what messages he's talking about either. I'm completely stunned. Part of me, the part that swore to be there for him always, tried to understand this as grief, manifesting in the most bizarre way. But another part of me, the part that heard him call me a killer, felt my love for him just evaporate. How could we ever come back from this? How could I ever look at him the same way? The thought of what he might be telling people we've known our whole lives, makes my stomach churn. I even suggested to his mom he might be having a psychotic break or a brain tumor, and she just said she'd talk to him. Aside from those initial interrogations, he hadn't been acting strange, just grieving. I felt like I was losing my mind. Desperate, I followed some advice I got online. I remembered his iCloud credentials were saved on an old iPad. I downloaded his entire message history with Laura. I combed through years of conversations, and there was nothing. Not a single thing like he described. No crazy, suspicious, or incestuous messages. Nothing to suggest he was cheating, nothing that would explain his monstrous accusation. Just siblings making plans, sharing memes, gossiping. The only horrible stuff was about other people, not me. It was a relief, in a way, but it also opened up a whole new chasm of questions. I decided I couldn't just sit there. I threatened his mom. If Luke didn't contact me by the weekend, I'd get a solicitor and push for a mental health assessment as part of a divorce. That's when all hell broke loose. Luke, who hadn't touched Facebook in years, made this incredibly long, detailed public accusation. He claimed he'd been planning to leave me for months with Laura's support, that I'd found the messages, killed her, and the police were about to arrest me. He even said the coroner had reopened the case. It was chillingly well written, almost plausible, and he messaged people links. We live in our hometown. Everyone knows us. People I hadn't spoken to since high school were messaging me, asking what was going on. It was pure madness. In a panic, I did the only thing I could think of. I exported his entire chat history with Laura, linked it, and posted my side of the story. I also changed his iCloud and Apple passwords and said if he wanted them back, he needed to publicly admit he was lying. He eventually did. When he called me the next morning, it was clear. This wasn't a mental episode. This was a man caught in a massive, ugly lie. He was clearly drunk, begging, promising to explain everything if I just deleted my post. I hung up. He kept calling, texting. He tried to bargain, to guilt-trip me with his mental health, but it sounded so rehearsed, so fake. And then, when it became obvious his lies were exposed, he blocked me. Begging for mercy, reciting facts about mental disorders, it just didn't align with someone genuinely believing their spouse was a murderer. The big why still hung heavy in the air. I wasn't giving him those passwords until I had answers. The legal advice I got online said what I did was technically illegal, but likely beneath a court to pursue. I was desperate. It was all I had left. The relationship I thought was my destiny since I was a teenager had devolved into this petty, convoluted, vindictive social media circus, all for reasons I couldn't fathom. My hope for a brain tumor had truly faded. I knew then that the next morning, I'd be calling a lawyer. I was mortified. I had no idea who would believe him, or why he'd done any of this. But then, a comment on my last post sparked something. It prompted me to look closer at Laura's finances. When she passed, we found about £3,000 in hidden debt. We chalked it up to her overspending, nothing too unusual. But looking back at Luke's messages, one about a payment suddenly stood out. It clicked. I remembered him paying at a garage for her car, but this message was different. I took a chance. I called his mom and told her I knew about the money. I said if he didn't get in touch that day, I'd make sure everyone knew. He called immediately, asking me to come to his parents' house. He looked absolutely dreadful. The first thing he asked was if I was happy now that all his friends hate him. I told him I didn't care about his friendships. I was there for answers. And then he told me he'd taken out loans and store cards in Laura's name. A coworker had apparently helped him set it all up. Laura found out just weeks before her accident. If she hadn't, he claimed they could have had it written off, without her ever knowing. But when she found out, the coworker bailed, and Luke was left holding the bag. I believe the gist of it, but it's still shocking he was this stupid. When she died so soon after, his brief, twisted suspicion was that she told me about it that day. We'd argued, and I'd pushed her. He couldn't explain why I would kill her over being a victim of fraud, but he said he felt guilty, and his brain just made it fit. Honestly, I almost believed him for a second, but then he started into more of that weaponized therapy speak, and I cut him off. The real kicker? A few months after Laura's death, Luke received a letter. Not from the police, but a credit company. They were investigating him. Laura didn't have much, so her debts, even with the fraud, were mostly written off. But something about that process flagged my husband. As the letters got more threatening, he became convinced the investigation would reopen the inquest. He believed he'd be accused of fraud, perjury, and, because of this previously unknown motive, possibly even causing Laura's death. He claimed the company only knew the fraud came from our address. So, accusing me? It would make it impossible to prove, a coin toss, as to which one of us took out the credit in Laura's name. That was worth our entire marriage to him, and my reputation in this community. We've been part of our whole lives. He said self-preservation kicked in. I looked at him, my heart breaking and hardening at the same time. How does your witness statement fit into this plan? I asked. The one where you already acknowledged knowing about the debt and paying it off. Because that proves you lied either way. He froze. For what felt like an eternity. Then, he just mumbled he hadn't thought of that. My response was a raw, choked-back scream. Then why, if you hadn't thought of it, did you specifically say it was a lie you needed to cover earlier in this conversation? Suddenly, he was sobbing. His parents rushed in, his mom practically pushing me out of their house. I was in tears too, asking how he could do this to me over something so incredibly stupid, how much they knew. She was crying, but she wouldn't say another word, just, I can't have this conversation with you. Now, I'm 99% sure. He wasn't trying to frame me for her accident. He was trying to frame me for the fraud. He was going to claim he lied for me in the coroner's interview, wrapping it all up as quietly paying off my debt, and then genuinely suspecting me of killing Laura. It would protect his reputation and point the finger squarely at me. It's the only way any of this makes sense. Is my husband truly trying to frame me to weasel out of his own actions? And how do I even begin to get to the bottom of this? I'm open to any theories, because honestly, I wouldn't have gotten this far without some of the insights I've already received. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever faced such a twisted betrayal? I really want to know what you think.